Welcome to this week's episode of our Aviation Marketing Podcast. I'm Paula Williams.
And I'm John Williams.
And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission is
to help you ladies and gentlemen out there in the aviation world sell more products and services.
Absolutely. So today we are doing a book club.
Yes, we are.
With one of our favorite, new favorite authors. Didn't used to be one of my favorites. I had a kind of a prejudice against this guy to begin with, just because of the way he presents himself. But I have grown to appreciate his style a little bit more.
And his background and his thoughts on today.
Exactly. So before we reveal who that is, not yet. That's okay. Before we reveal who that is, okay, we'll reveal who that is. This is Gary Vaynerchuk and the book Jab, 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 Right Hook.
Right.
How to Tell Your Story in a Noisy Social World. And, of course, we talk about this with our book club facilitator and our kid, Mickey Gaminal, and it's a really fun conversation, so we'll get into that. But before we do, our cardinal rule at ABCI is no random acts of marketing, and most of the problems we see with social media are that you can have an unplanned strategy and unmeasured implementation. It's just so easy that it's just easy to just start doing stuff without really thinking it through. So if you're wondering how you can get all those metrics and numbers that we keep harping on and see how much you're paying for each social channel and how much value each campaign is generating, it's really important to have a system to keep track of all that stuff. So we're using SharpSpring as our CRM, and we've installed it for a few aviation clients. One of the cool things is that you can run an advertisement on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or run a post on one of those channels and see how many leads you receive from it and how much each of those opportunities is worth. So a system like SharpSpring can really help. Of course, any software is only as good as the data you put into it. So with our Aviation Lead Generator program, we bundle the SharpSpring CRM with our famous ABCI service. So the nice thing about tracking social media is that it's mostly automatic. Someone visits your Facebook page and then goes to your website and then fills out a form and then gets a checklist or an ebook and then opens a few of your emails and eventually buys from you. Generally, he won't even remember that he found you on Facebook, and you certainly won't remember that either. So Bob Seeger says rock and roll never forgets, but we're saying that software never forgets. We do all the configuring, we connect it to your website, we set up your campaigns and so on, so that it starts collecting data right away. And the longer you use it, the better the data will be, because we do have long sales cycles in aviation, and sometimes a person you meet today at an event or a person that sees an ad on your Facebook page today might not become a customer until 8 months later. So a system like our lead generator becomes more and more valuable over time. So you can check out the details at abci1.com/lead generator. Thanks for joining us. But let's jump into our book club.
So welcome back to ABCI's book club. Today we are discussing Gary Vaynerchuk's Jab, 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 Right Hook, how to tell your story in a noisy social world. Before we get started, go ahead and let me know your initial thoughts. We'll start with Mom.
Okay. I like Gary V in spite of myself, I think. I think he's a little rough around the edges, and I would like for people to dress up, be prepared, show some respect to their clients and their customers. And Gary V is like the complete opposite of that, but I like him anyway, because he is so real and he is so himself and he is so authentic to what he does. And Jab, 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 Right Hook, I think, did a really good job of explaining his method of give, then ask, instead of always asking, which is, he's trying to break a pattern, and by establishing a new pattern, which takes a lot of guts for somebody who is so new to the scene, I guess. Speaking as an old timer, there you go.
No, fair enough. Cool. What about you, John? What do you think?
I think in one word, and not to take away from what Paula said, but I call it refreshing.
Okay.
Refreshing honesty, refreshing non-BS.
Yeah. No, he's pretty straightforward in what he says. And like Dan, I mean, you can't really argue with it. You may not like his style, but there it is.
Like Dan Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, it's funny because we just reviewed Dan Kennedy's book, The Ultimate Marketing Plan, and in that book, it was jarring. Was one of the statements I use when reviewing the book is just very finite statements of this is how it will be, this is how it will be, and Gary Vaynerchuk does kind of follow the same method. He definitely writes his book like he's writing commandments. In this case, they're presented as rounds of a boxing match. There's 12 rounds and all that sort of thing. But it's still very much like this is the final word on this topic, and you can take it or leave it, but I'm right. And you gotta envy. Like, I mean, shoot, if you're gonna write a book that you want more than one person to read, you gotta believe that you have something that more than one person needs to hear. And I think Gary Vaynerchuk really believes in himself and his statements throughout. One thing that I personally liked about the book is that it does talk about specifically Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you can see on the book cover, it has the Google Plus, LinkedIn, Tumblr, Pinterest, Vine, and Snapchat. It has all of these social media platforms. And he treats them all as though there's some sort of a obstacle to overcome for your business. And I think that's great, cast a wide net and all that sort of thing. But he does also zero in on how to find the proper clients within each platform, which I think is also beneficial. But again, this is another book, just like The Ultimate Marketing Plan, where maybe it's just too much. It's too broad, too much information for anybody to really go out and create some sort of a marketing plan.
Right.
For me, in my opinion.
So it was.
I got a quote from this book too.
All right, go for it. Hit us with the quotes.
This is this quote is actually talks to Gary and his approach, his style. And this is under, I don't know, page 86, under a title called Expand Your Universe. Anyway, several paragraphs down there, and the ... It says, fortunately, there's a book available that offers detailed explanations of why and how Twitter can be one of business's most powerful customer service tools. It's my last book, The Thank You Economy. Read it. Good. And his asterisk behind it says, how's that for a right hook?
Right. And we did review the Thank You Economy earlier this year. So
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is this is pretty much Todd tells you about him and how he approaches marketing.
Mm-hmm. That is true. I think my favorite thing about the book was he had a better explanation. I've always struggled with trying to help people understand the difference between a native and a non-native ad. And it's not an easy concept to grasp, but there's actually a page, and I don't have the page number in front of me, but there is a page where he has illustrations, and I'm going to put this in the video for this, and we'll put the page number in the notes. Illustrations of native versus non-native ads in some of the media. And he shows, like, for example, there's a non-native ad is an ad that looks like it was pulled out of a magazine and stuck into Facebook. So the page size is wrong. It's got, a complete advertisement kind of a situation that comes out of an advertising textbook. That is a non-native ad. A native ad is where you have a tweet from Cookie Monster where he's tweeting about something that he's doing, and it shows just a picture of Cookie Monster, and you have to read the comments underneath to actually get the gist of the ad. So it kind of forces itself into the mode, or into the media. So it doesn't break the screen, and say, I'm an ad. it says, I am a Facebook post from the Cookie Monster, and then you have to read the post from the Cookie Monster to find out that it is an ad. That was,
No,
yeah.
I completely agree. Like when I was reading, because he has examples at the end of each round of ads that he approves of, and he makes a statement that this is just him garnering his approval. It's not necessarily it brought in X amount of sales or Y amount of sales or what have you, but it's just things that he thinks work and things that he thinks doesn't. And it made me think of, okay, so a non-native ad would be if you set up some sort of a telecommuter device where they call in and they start saying a picture, they start saying like, 3x5, it's the beach, it's sunset, and there's Corona in a man and woman's hand. And like, you're not going to answer that phone. You're not going to wait for that message to even impact your eardrum, because you're like, first off, this is a computer. This is clearly a computer. Secondly, they're talking about something that is completely unrelated to me to sell something that I have no interest in buying right now. Like, it's, so cringy, it's so awkward and forced. And that's one thing that he's really trying to prevent is, if you're going to create, say, a Pinterest post, you should make sure that it resonates with your audience. You should look at what your audience is looking at before you go through and create your post. You shouldn't just say, X amount of dollars off, because even though discounts do sell, there's a right and a wrong way to market those discounts. And if you're marketing it the wrong way, you could just be wasting time, and at the end of the day, it's kind of what marketing is all about, is getting as many customers as you can for as little time as possible.
Right.
So, a lot of that comes from targeting, but with social media, those targets are kind of broadly painted. You have all of Facebook at your disposal, but if you go in and look at Facebook groups, or if you go in and look at, Instagram groups, and there is a difference between the way Facebook users and Instagram users communicate, even if they're the same person. I would leave the same comment on an Instagram picture that I would leave on a Facebook picture, just because of knowing the area that I'm in, the platform that I'm on.
Right. That makes total sense, because, you go to Facebook as an example. I never go to Facebook for work if I can help it, unless I'm setting up an ad or whatever. But as a consumer, I go to Facebook to be amused and entertained, and maybe to socialize, so if I see a post from Cookie Monster, I want to be entertained when I'm on Facebook. So of course I'm going to read that. If I see something that looks like an ad, I'm going to skip right over it, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to shop. I'm here to be entertained. Same thing with LinkedIn. I think if you break the mindset, people will skip over it. So, I go to LinkedIn to network. And, if I see something that is too funny or too frivolous or too, out there on Facebook, I'll skip over it, because I think it's not appropriate for this media. This is not what I'm here for, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you get yourself into a frame of mind when you open those apps, whether consciously or subconsciously. You're saying to yourself, oh, I want to see what's going on at Snapchat right now. And, if you see something that shouldn't be going on Snapchat, you're automatically just going to skip over it. So
yeah, looks like AstroTurf.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you asked a question, I think, on your, or in the group, which I thought was a really good one. And that was, should you be on every channel? And that kind of feeds from that question into, of course, Gary's opinion is that, yes, you should be doing everything with everybody all the time, because it's free. So why not?
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I think he's got a point. I think for somebody who's brand new, starting off business, shoot your shot, man. Like, personally, I'd never been on Twitter. I'd seen Twitter posts on my Facebook or on Instagram, but I had never, physically been on Twitter or Tumblr, the website itself. And I hadn't been on Pinterest in years. But I reactivated my accounts and, threw a couple ads out there just kind of to see. But really what I'm trying to do at this point is trying to consume more of that media and kind of see what's going on there and see if it's something worthwhile. Just like reading these books, being educated on these platforms comes from interacting on them and seeing what goes on, around you. So I'm trying to get a better feel for it. Pinterest sounds great, especially for me as a tutor. Like, moms, there's got to be a million moms out there who, make their kids lunches that have 9 grams of amino protein or X, Y, or Z, but, they're dying to get their kid to pass math, and that's not happening. And I'm like, oh, well, that's my market, man. Like, let me in. That's where I want to be. But figuring out how to target that and what device to target that takes a little bit of research. I'm happy I read it, but I don't feel prepared to make that step just yet. It's definitely something that I want to look through and
right.
So I agree that knowing about all of your social media is important. Whether you have an active following on each social media or not, I think that's it's really up for debate. You can spend 20 minutes on your Facebook a day and still have a very successful Facebook, but we don't. As humans, these things give us endorphins and serotonin levels, and we get consumed. That's the whole point of these social media, to kind of take over your being, and you spend all your time looking at what everybody else is up to.
One more cat video, right?
Exactly. So I think it's great to know about everything, and it's great to spend a little bit of time on everything. However, you just gotta be aware of where you're spending your time.
Yeah, and I think having the discipline, and I know he kind of talks about this in the book, but what we do with our clients is we like to do a 90-day test for a social media that they want to try, and that they found, their competitors are on it, their most wanted customers are on it. Okay, well, let's do a 90-day test. And, that's long enough to see if it's actually going to have an impact, if you start generating some activity and interest and things like that. And it is short enough that you're not wasting a ton of resources if it is a bad fit. And then you can always move on to the next one and say, you know what, Instagram isn't working for us. Let's try Pinterest, and it may be just a slightly different angle that's going to work better for you.
How about you, John? You got any thoughts on that stuff, on social media marketing?
No, the only thing would be to ascertain where your customers and competitors are, and that's where you need to be.
Yeah, I like that. 2 steps. A, where is everybody at? B, how do I get there?
Right. And don't just, blare out your same ad on all 5 channels if it's not going to resonate well and if it's not going to do well. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, he does a great job. I mean, he cusses out G for, he yells at all these major brands.
Yeah.
He's like, Smirnoff should be ashamed, and stuff like that for not speaking the native language of the platform that they're advertising on. And I think that's great. I think that's really good. Just like, if you were to take an ad out in Thrasher versus if you're going to take an ad out in,
Wall Street Journal,
the Wall Street Journal, and then Men's Health, you got these 3 and you make them all the same. It doesn't matter how good your product is. It doesn't matter how good your copy is. Like, if it's not created for that demographic, it's going to fall short. It may get sales, but it's not going to reach its fullest capability.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think a lot of marketing, just basically from what I've read, a lot of marketing comes from knowing your audience. And I thought that was really insightful. And I think this book makes a really good point, using very clear-cut examples.
True. What's really interesting is you could take the same offer, and it might appeal to Men's Health and Thrasher and Wall Street Journal readers, that same offer, but you want to make a completely different style of a presentation. So, every ad has a list offer and a presentation, right? So your offer might be exactly the same, but your list is very different. So your presentation has to be very different. Does that make sense? So, Smirnoff vodka. Okay, everybody drinks vodka, but in saying that you have 47 flavors of vodka, and I'm just making stuff up right now, I don't know. But in men's health, you can say, you know what, you can have light cocktails using whatever,
Right. It's going to be a mixer. It's not going to be the vodka, but still,
yeah.
they would be, acknowledging something different. No.
Yeah. So here's a bunch of recipes for light cocktails, and then in Thrasher magazine is just alcohol is cool.
Right.
Right. And in the Wall Street Journal, you'd have 3 different recipes for cocktails that are, prestigious and fabulous. So,
Right. Yeah. And then, yeah, exactly. Get drunk, do kickflips versus,
impress your colleagues and clients with this.
The proper Manhattan.
Yeah.
Exactly. Probably wouldn't go as well on Thrasher. So yeah, no, I really like that statement that, people need to be catered to, because God knows as soon as they're your customer, you're bending over backwards. You're doing whatever you can to get them. So before that, a little bit of insight into what they want to see is probably necessary.
Right.
John, you got any other quotes on this one, or are we good?
No, that's just pretty much. I like Gary. I like his style, and it's very refreshing because he just has a new approach. He may not have refined it like it should be yet, but he's got a new approach.
I like the format of the book, and John or Mickey, you might want to show. You've got mine, John, but it's very, very visual, and it's in color, and it's printed, really nicely. I was surprised because Gary Vaynerchuk is so unglossy, and this is a really, really well printed, beautiful, fabulous book with great examples and illustrations and everything else in it.
Yeah, no, I think that's one thing that he did really well. Is he would write this whole page about this ad, and then you look over at the ad, and you can see very specifically, oh, this is what he means that it's wrong.
Yeah, super visual, which is really nice.
Yeah, and then also at the end of the chapter, he has kind of statements. I remember I wrote this in the group as well. This one's for Tumblr, but essentially, this is what the questions you should ask yourself before posting for each media.
Yeah,
I think that's very practical. I thought that was really good.
So. And those were good questions, not just for Tumblr, but for any ad. Is this the best we can do? Is this the best visual we could get for this to make this point? I think that's a good checklist that should be on the wall of everybody who does marketing.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And two major things that stood out to me from this particular book were, one, he stated that in most of your posts, you should have your logo there, because your profile picture is not going to get clicked on. You should have, if you have your logo, they'll at least acknowledge that you exist. They'll probably at least see, if they look at your post for more than a couple of seconds, they'll see who it's from.
Yeah.
Which is less likely if you don't have a logo on it.
Exactly.
And the other one was make sure that your links work, which is something everybody's guilty of. Like, we've all gone on there and hey, this is funny, click, and then you figure it goes out to the infosphere and you never see it again. But yeah, that's something that even massive companies, he's got examples from Walmart, or I think Smirnoff was the example. Smirnoff didn't go anywhere. You click the link. Or Lululemon was great. And this was on Tumblr, which Tumblr is, an internet-friendly site where people are on Tumblr to be on the internet all day long. And the link didn't go anywhere. So they look at this, awesome post. And it's a really beautiful infographic that's totally native to Tumblr, where you follow from point A, which is do you want leggings? Or it says, are you a traveler, a daredevil, an expert, a heat seeker, or a nature lover? Which is something that anybody who's scrolling through the internet is which one am I? And then the line goes. And then it goes all the way through 30 different questions for each one. And then there's no link, there's no way to once you decide, I need, the yoga mat 3000. There's no way to get it. Like now you have to go and try to figure out, well, I'm a daredevil, so I probably have better things to do. Look for the yoga mat 3000. It was good. It was a good amount of levity. Because he calls out, the big dogs. So I appreciate that, because they do. They crap on us all the time. We think about advertisements from Budweiser or Old Spice where they missed the mark and we don't agree with what they had to say. And he acknowledges the fact that there's probably a good percentage of people who notice when they're being neglected. And you might as well put in that little bit of extra effort. I mean, Lululemon, add a link to your Tumblr picture that you probably paid some graphic designer a significant amount of money for, to get
you 90% of the way to a sale, and then drop right. 90% of the way across the river and then drop you in, Exactly.
I mean, for me, if I went through that whole infographic, I was like, well, I guess I'll look for a 3000, yoga mat 3000 at Goodwill, like,
right? Exactly. You're off to Amazon or someplace where you can find it because now you know what you want, but
exactly. Sale, so. Right. And I think there's a lot to be said for funneling sales to your demographic. Like for me, when I come into contact with other tutors, I really wish them the best, because I know that the more people who are going to Kumon, Mathnasium, Sylvan, the more people that will come to get private tutoring. The more people that are getting private tutors from other areas are going to come to other areas for private tutoring. Like, I recognize that these industries work as a collaboration. And Lululemon, the more yoga mats that are sold, I'm sure you see something affecting your bottom line. I'm sure you're getting more money at the end of the day. But you might as well cash in on those early prospects.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. How did you guys feel? Do we got a general thumbs up, thumbs down?
Thumbs up from me.
I'd say thumbs up.
I'd say this is one of the top 3 of the year. I think it was really well done. It was a really good book.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really relatable. Like, say I give this to, I'm totally honest. because we get so many books. We get 12 books a year. I think it's good to give them out to your networks. And I'm probably going to give this one to my boxing coach because it's got a boxing reference. But I know if I can hand it to him and say, hey, maybe you want to read the chapter on Facebook, because he is, he's a boxer and everything like that. And he uses Instagram and his Facebook to relate to his fans. I can say, look at these chapters and just be very specific when I hand it off, as opposed to other books where they're either a complete and total work of, you have to read A to B because it goes in order, or something else where there's just too much information. It's very organized, very well organized.
No, I totally hope all of our clients are handing these books out to their networks as well. They really should be helping your network, and books are a wonderful way to connect with people. There's a story about it was Ben Franklin. He wanted to make friends with somebody who was notoriously unfriendly. I think it was somebody in France. He was the ambassador to France, and he borrowed a book from this person. And at that time, it was, books were so expensive and, everything else, that borrowing a book was a big deal. But he knew that if he asked this guy for a favor, then that made this connection between them. So it's not always about giving. As Gary Vaynerchuk says, it's not always about give. Also, if you ask somebody for a favor or borrow a book, or ask if you can borrow one of their books, that is, just a super way to connect with people, I think, because then you end up talking about ideas.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's from the 48 Laws of Power. I remember reading that story too.
Okay. You remember that one? Cool. We'll have to find the reference and fill in the details because I'm a little fuzzy on it, but that was a good story.
No, absolutely. Yeah, go out there and give value. A lot of the podcasts I listen to are very, at the end of them, it's all like, just go give value.
Yep. And the more books you have and the more books you've read, the more value you can give, right?
Exactly.
Cool. Well done.
Good job, everybody. So, yeah, thanks for joining us and good luck.
All right.